This topic is about something that I have noticed in a lot of my students' work, and that is what happens when you have a knit stitch followed by a purl stitch, as you would in ribbing or seed stitch or cables. And it is only a problem, really, on the knit to the purl, not the purl to the knit. Now, for example, if I spread this apart here, notice that the length of the horizontal bar between this knit stitch and the purl stitch on the other side is much wider, and it is a ladder. But if I look on the purl to a knit, there is almost no ladder at all. And this can affect a lot of different things. Usually you see it in ribbing. Now, in this example, if you look at this column of stitches right here and this column of stitches, they are larger than the column of stitches over here and this column and this column. And the reason for that is that the excess yarn in those ladders often works their way back to the column of stitches. And keep in mind that when I'm on, this is the right side, I've decided, this is going to be this column of stitches that is large. I'm going to stick my needle in here and flip it over. And over here, it is the purl stitch that's going to be large. And that one's going to be tidy. Now this one is where, if I go here, I have that purl that is next to a knit stitch. Now, one of the ways how this happens is pretty easy, which we'll get to in a second, but and how to fix it is pretty easy. But what it affects is ribbing for the most part, and it is the most common reason that patterns will specify a smaller needle to be used for ribbing, because most people's ribbing is too loose. And it's not that they're knitting any looser than when they knit, it's just how they deal with that purl stitch. If you eliminate this excess yarn in here, it will dramatically improve your ribbing. Particularly looks bad in knit to purl to ribbing, where you'll have one column that is nice and neat and then the other one is big and sloppy with a ladder next to it. It also improves seed stitch, cables, even bar increases can have this problem. Now, how this happens is I'm going to go ahead and knit. I'm knitting and I'm using my regular tension, and then I want to work to that purl stitch. Well, I have to bring that yarn forward, and notice how much yarn, the slack in this. So if I go ahead and I just purl using my regular tension, that slack is going to stay between those stitches or work its way back to this one. Now notice that when I go from a purl to a knit, I tend to bring the yarn all the way backwards. So the next knit stitch is going to be fine. But where that excess yarn is going to come into play is, notice all of that excess yarn. How much of that is going to get used for the stitch? Well, some of it, but a lot of it's going to wind up in that space there. And then again, when I pull it back. Now the easiest fix for this is that when you are going from a knit to a purl, is that you simply take care to make sure, so I'm going from a purl to a knit, not a problem. Okay, here's a knit to a purl. That I bring that yarn all the way forward, rather than starting to knit from here, where I have a purl. I make sure that I have that yarn all the way forward, and then I form my stitch. And notice that in this case, there is almost no slack. And it more evenly matches what I am doing for the knit stitch. Again, I just bring it forward a bit. Now, when I have taught this in classes before and I say that I'm bringing it forward, what I have seen some students do is that they really, and notice that there is no, where I did that, there is no gap, okay, is that they'll do something like this. Okay, I want to bring that yarn forward. They not only bring it forward, they pull it tight, Well, that's just going to create a problem. What that's going to do is it's going to pull the yarn from these stitches. So I'm going to have a tension issue. It won't be that tension issue, but I will have another one. So what I want to do is just make sure that I have it forward, and I can eliminate. And my ribbing is going to look much nicer. My seed stitch will be a dense fabric, which it is supposed to be. I will eliminate cable ladders. And again, it takes some practice, but once you get used to it, you can see that ladder, and then really very little ladders. Once you get used to doing that, you can really resolve a lot of your tension issues and have much better ribbing. And then when you see in a pattern that you need a size needle for the ribbing that you don't have, you don't need to use it. You just need to use your regular ribbing.